Hey y'all, you're listening to the Immersion podcast. Here on the show, we'll learn from guests from all walks of life, exploring the impact of character on the mundane and the extraordinary alike. Thanks for joining. I'm your host, Ben Liu. If you enjoyed today's episode, go share it with a friend. Alrighty, friends. Today, I'm so excited to have my good friend, Dave Kunselman, with us. I met Dave,
No, it was more than that. Probably
3 years ago.
3 years ago.
Yeah. 3 years ago, as we had a mutual friend introduce us, and I actually worked for Dave and his company, the Productivity Team, of which, Dave, can you tell us what the Productivity Team is and does?
Yeah, we're an engineering services firm based in Southeast Michigan. We've got a couple other offices. Got one in Mexico, one in South Africa. But the majority of the work we do is, right here in the United States.
Come on, that's so cool. And so, I brought Dave on because, well, really, I brought you on. That way we don't have to have this third wall here. I brought you on because, man, there's something so cool about what your company does and your insight to do so, right? And it's that understanding of you can put anyone in a job and it might work out okay, or conversely, it could go real bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or it just might not be the right fit overall for both parties. And having the insight and the resourcefulness and a bit of character reading / intuition allows you guys to then pair people into the right industries for the right companies and so on and so forth. And I thought that was so cool because it takes a lot of understanding of a person and situations, because it's not just hey, we need a creative director, or hey, we need just a standard engineer. It's no, if you're getting into something so specific, why not get the right person for the right job? Right. And it probably ends up saving companies a lot of time. It saves obviously the person getting hired on a lot of time from having to sift through a bunch of interviews. Is this right? So on and so forth. And without having to dive into the productivity team's entire process of how do you pair all these things up? It's man, where did that skill set come through to recognize that for big and small or intricate problems that you could bring solutions for it?
Well, it all started really with Ford. Ford Motor Company was my first client, and they had a need for industrial engineers. And at the time, I was selling conveyor engineering. So I said, well, you don't need conveyors, you need industrial engineers. Let me figure out what that is. So I went back to my boss at the time and I said, hey, they don't really need any conveyor support right now, but they need industrial engineering. So they kind of I don't know about this. I don't know about this. Well, by the time I ended up leaving the company and starting my own, the industrial engineering piece was the largest piece of the company. Because it was what the customer wanted at the time. And industrial engineering is probably, I think, the most versatile engineer, because they touch quality, they touch manufacturing process, they touch labor. It's basically all aspects of what's going on inside of a plant is touched by industrial engineering. So I figured, this is how I'm going to start the company. So for years, we just did industrial engineering. And then we started to drift over into other segments. And now we've got, last year we topped out at 236 employees.
Come on.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
And what you were talking about, matching the right individual with the right opportunity, I couldn't do that by myself anymore. So I have an entire team. I've got project directors, vice president of operations. They're really the ones that when the opportunity comes, they look at our available resources and they say, you know what, this guy can do this girl can do that. And that's how we pair everybody up, submit the proposal to the client, show them who is the person they're going to get. And, most of the time we win it.
Come on. That's so cool. So then there's got to be a lot of satisfaction on all fronts at that point, right? Because it's for someone, it might be man, I needed this dream position with Ford or whomever else.
Right. And that's another thing we do is we also do direct placement. That kind of evolved from, we'd put an engineer on site for, let's say, 6 months to solve a problem, and then they would want to hire the person. Well, sometimes the person would not want to go to that company. They'd want to stay with us. And I definitely didn't want the client to hire him, because that's our product, is our people. But we realized that this is a need in the industry. And then we actually we would talk to the clients up front and say, hey, look, if your goal is really to hire a permanent person and you want to bring somebody in to solve a short-term solution and then bring them on full-time, let me know that right in the beginning. And then that started a whole nother division for our company.
Amazing, because then it was all front loading, so that way you didn't have to necessarily sort through any extra details per se up front.
No,
at least
they'd say, hey, we need a manufacturing engineer for 3 months to work in Tennessee. And we'd send them down there. And at the end of the 3 months, they'd say, you know what, we actually want to bring this person on board. I've already talked to the engineer that we brought on, or one of my people has. So it's not a surprise to them. So the worst case scenario would be they work there 3 months and then say, no, you know what, I don't like you guys, I don't want to work. So that I shouldn't say never happens, but very rarely happens.
Yeah, where it's like just not a good fit.
They know from the beginning, going in what it's going to be like.
Yeah. Okay, that's super cool. Versus like, because job placements, I'm sure, can get real hairy in the recruitment industry overall, where it's like, okay, like 6 months, and then is it 6 months and we're extending, or is it 6 months and we're just gone? Like it's
And that was, you know what, that was one of the things when I started the company early on. I just made the decision to hire full-time employees versus contract for our company, because we still do use contract, but the majority are full-time employees with healthcare and 401k match, all that stuff. So I wanted to make sure that they didn't have to worry about their next job. That's what our sales team is for. We're constantly out looking for new opportunities, and we constantly have opportunities coming into us through a lot of social media, through SEO, website searches. That yields a couple, 2 or 3 opportunities a week.
Come on.
Amazing. Oh yeah, I wish I'd have been doing it since I started the company, 18 years ago, because I'd have a jet by now.
Yeah. Understandably so. And that's super cool, because that means like the people who are working for you and those who are contracted, it essentially is almost like having their own salesperson to make sure that they have job security, essentially.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's a lot of independent consultants out there that are really good at selling a job, but then they got to work that job for however period of time to deliver the deliverable they sold. They don't have time to sell their next job. So I have a lot of independent consultants that actually come to work for us as employees, because the marketing side of it, they just didn't have time for it, didn't like doing it, or weren't any good at it.
Right. Just because it's.
But they were really good at the work they did.
Yeah. Which is so cool, because then it gets back to like, hey, like, let's specialize on this one thing. And so whether it's from the salesperson to the person running the marketing to the person actually establishing the connections and follow through and working through the people, everyone's got a place where it's like boom, 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 boom. You know what you're doing, and you don't have to take on an extra hat, an extra role that is going to take you away from what you're actually really good at.
Right.
Which is super awesome, because it feels like in this day and age, there's so many people that are companies that I've interacted with that want someone who is not necessarily specialized, but well-rounded. And it's like, you can have that, but I always felt like if you could specialize in something, and maybe you could speak to this a little bit, that if you're so good that people can't ignore you, then it's like, why wouldn't you head into that route? Right?
Yeah. Yeah. The thing with me is I recognized early on that, I'm not an engineer. I don't have an engineering degree. I was a salesperson. I did sales at an engineering firm. And the reason I got that job is I interviewed, and they said, you don't have a degree in engineering. I said, yeah, I know, but I know a lot about cars. It's like, what do you mean? I said, I've been working on cars and motorcycles since I was a little kid. So they actually hired me only because I could talk to anybody about any part of a vehicle. And
That's awesome.
And that's how it started. But what that did for me was it forced me to go out and sell, because what happens with some independent consultants, and even for yourself, you have to go work on a job to get paid.
Oh yeah.
So I couldn't do the job I was selling.
Right.
So I had to hire more people, and I had to have people do the job, and it forced me just to focus on the marketing. And I mean, that's been a differentiator for us.
That's awesome. And do you see like a domino effect of like getting the right people in for the right job, and then further down the line, the initial contact from whichever company would come back and be like, hey, thank you so much from your previous work. We have a new project, different scale, higher scale. can you also fulfill this?
Yeah, and that the repeat business is how our project managers and project directors are scored.
Okay.
So if we do a project and there's no repeat business, there's a reason. Either the company sold or went out of business, or we didn't do a good job. So
Fair enough.
I want to find out from the project manager, how come we didn't get another opportunity? Because anybody that's building anything, they're constantly evolving their product, and they always will have a need for a service like ours.
Right. No, that makes sense. Yeah, because I remember, it's so funny. I was just with your son Noah yesterday as we were at a coffee shop just catching up. And this photographer I knew walked in. And he was just starting off, like maybe 2-3 years into his photographic journey, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, "Man, like, Ben, how do you get to the place that you're at? Like, you're traveling, you're doing all these things." And I'm like, "Well, like, I've got a few years ahead of you, so like that helps, you know." But as I was like detailing some things, Noah jumped in, and it was so cool to actually see him take everything that you've taught him essentially, and kind of also, and not everything.
He teaches me a lot too.
I'm sure. I mean, you're both smart guys, like super, super cool guys, where like it was so interesting to see a bit of you in his interactions and teach this young guy, like, hey, like, you know, in order to get repeat business,
Yep.
to get better clients, to move forward in your business, like you have to give a little more sometimes, whether it's like, hey, like you just got to throw in a few extra hours, or you just got to put in the hard work, or if it's just like touching base with your clients after their experience and saying, hey, you know, how'd we do?
Very important.
How important, or like how just getting all that feedback was so cool to see. And I literally like stepped back from the conversation because I was like, I knew this kid had questions of like, hey, like, how do I shoot for this company that you've already shot for? And I'm like, that's in my head, I'm like, well, that's a question that I can't answer right now, because not because I'm gatekeeping, but because it's going to put this gentleman with too much info that isn't going to be useful to him at this very moment in time, versus what Noah had put in and was like, hey, like, yeah, like if you can do this and get really good at your soft skills, to your follow-ups, to make sure these processes are in place, why wouldn't you? Because you know, end of the day, you know, being an entrepreneur or a business owner overall, it's like you have to get customer feedback.
Oh yeah. Especially, you know, and then the other thing to piggyback onto that is networking. You know, I mean, especially people in the creative world, like, you know, Noah has his own marketing company, and you guys have, you know, bounced ideas off of each other. Having that network is key.
Absolutely.
Of people to rely on, especially when you're young and first starting out.
Oh yeah, hands down. Is there like a presence with AI in what you do currently, or is there like, is it a threat? Is it a tool? Is it like,
it's a tool?
Okay. I'm trying to think if I even want to touch into that portion. I don't think I really do.
Okay.
And it's not because I don't like AI. I'm just like whichever about it.
AI is crazy.
It is. There's a lot of possibilities, and I'm like, okay, you know.
Yeah. We hired this marketing company, and they wrote blog posts for us. You know, when we paid them, I don't know, a couple $1,000 a month or something like that to do that. And I'm reading this stuff, and I'm like, man, this is really good. How did you guys learn? We did research and whatever. Then one day, literally, I was sitting with Noah, and he was doing something. He goes, yeah, have you ever heard of this AI software? You know, I won't mention the name, but I'm like, no, I don't even know what that is. He goes, just give me a phrase. And I said, lean manufacturing consulting. He types it in, and 10 seconds later, there's pages and pages of this information. And I thought, that's how they do it.
They researched. They hit a query, but they definitely researched.
Yeah. And hey, it's whatever they're doing, it's working.
Yeah.
Like I said, we get 2 or 3 opportunities a week.
Come on. That's so cool. One of my favorite stories you've told me about just like your intuition for this skill set to be able to sell even was that trip you took with your wife down to Kentucky.
Oh, to Maker's Mark?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you tell that story? I thought that was always like so cool, where I was like, this this is the mark of somebody who knows what they're doing, where it's not just like because it's your job or because it's your role, but like even in your day to day as
Yeah.
you're on a, trip down. But yeah.
Yeah, so I have a lot of customers in the Louisville area. Ford has a couple pretty big assembly plants there, and we were down in the area, and we decided to do the bourbon tasting. So we went to the Maker's Mark plant, and I don't know if you're familiar with Maker's Mark, but the top is wax, you know.
Yep.
So we do the tour, and we're having a great time, and we get to the part where the end of the line, where the bottles are coming off the line before they go into a box. And I see two people sitting on either side of the line, and every now and then they'd pick a bottle up off the conveyor belt and pull a piece of this red wax off. So I'm watching it, and then finally I said, "What are they doing?" And he said, "If the temperature or if the wax drips onto the label, they have to pull it off because we can't ship it with the wax running onto the label. It's it's not aesthetically pleasing." I'm like, okay. So we finished the tour, and I'm thinking about this the whole time. I'm thinking, wow, two resources dedicated to just taking a piece of wax off. Finally, we get to the end of the tour, and we do the thing where we get to dip our own bottle ourselves.
Come on.
Yeah. And so I dip my bottle, and I'm looking at it, and I said, I got it figured out. And my wife goes, "What are you talking about?" I said, "I figured out how we're going to repurpose those two people those two quality control people at the end of the line." She goes, "Don't do it. Don't embarrass me. Just." I said, "I have to. It's in my DNA. I have to do this." So I asked our tour guide. I said, "Hey, is there a manager here?" And she said, "Yeah. What's the problem?" I said, "No, I just want to talk to him about something." She said, "Okay." So she brings this guy over, and I said, "Do you want to be employee of the month?" And he said, "Yes." I said, "Turn down the temperature on your wax so it doesn't drip onto the label, and you can repurpose those two full-time resources." He looks at me and he goes, "I can't believe our bottling manager never thought of that." And I was like, "Yeah, you can have that one for free."
That's so good. Because it's like that understanding where you could capitalize, like, I have to do this.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's so cool that you recognize, like, I don't need to get paid for this. I just appreciate this for what it is. Like, let's just.
And it was a lot of fun. I like Maker's Marks. It was
yeah.
a blast.
Come on. That's so cool. Because to me, like, it's moments like those where it's like, why would you not? Right.
Yeah. Maybe those two people are sick and tired of taking a piece of red wax off a label 8 hours a day, and they'd want to do something different.
Right. Or they have like other projects that they're overlooking for, the various other.
It's not like they're gonna look to replace them with a robot or anything. This is a valuable resource that they can use somewhere else because there's always needs in a manufacturing
especially
facility
with a name
that
as
size.
big as Maker's Mark.
Oh yeah,
it's like, hello.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's so cool. Yeah. I mean, there's that. And then like, I look at the fruit of your life of being able to take your talent and being able to take your drive. And then being able to dispense the wisdom of your own entrepreneurship journey all the way to making time for your family, all the way to making time for yourself as an accomplished sportsman. I think that's super awesome because it's like, hey, like there's a lot of guys that I've met that are good entrepreneurs, but maybe not the best family men, or their entire life is wrapped around work where it's like, are they actually working or not? Are they actually working? Do they have an identity outside of work? Because sometimes it's so enveloping. It almost becomes just one. Whereas like and this is actually where, you and I have chatted and texted a few times, but just like, before I went down to Texas, I texted you like, hey, like I've got this awesome opportunity. Would love your insight of like, maybe some things I could ask or things that I should ask about, yada, 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 regarding like fly fishing or hunting and different things like that. Because in a way, like, is being a sportsman just like a way to relax, or is it something that you actually like love doing and it's relaxing at the same time?
It's both. It's probably more relaxing now because I've made it's been an evolution from my dad teaching me how to hunt and fish, and now I've done it my whole life. I'm 53. I've been doing it since I was 2 years old.
Come on.
And now it's teaching other people. And as a matter of fact, I took somebody hunting last year for the first time, and they're both, one's in his 60s and one's in his late 50s. Never hunted before in their life.
Oh man. Okay.
And they loved it.
Yeah. So. That's awesome. See, like it's stuff like that where being able to make use of your time, obviously the funds are funds, right? But like being able to utilize your time where like, man, like I still see every so often when I am on Facebook, like you and Austin going out on a hunt. I'm like, okay, that's cool.
We were in Africa for 3 weeks. We just got back last week.
Yeah. That's so cool. Like, and it's not just for the fact of saying like, oh, we went on this hunt. It's the fact that like, even in the fruits of so many years poured into work, you're still able to say, hey, I want to spend time with my sons.
Yeah.
I want to spend time with my wife, and so on and so forth.
Even at the height of the busiest I've ever been with the productivity team, I almost never. I mean, I can probably count on one hand the amount of times I traveled on a weekend.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I mean, I used to go to England every 6 weeks. I'd fly out on a Monday and I'd fly back Friday.
Wow.
Yeah.
Holy smokes.
Like
okay.
every 6 weeks for like years and years, working with Jaguar and Land Rover. But the kids were playing football on the weekends or whatever they were doing. You know, I always made it home for the weekends.
Wow, that's huge. And I'm sure your sons totally appreciated
Oh
that.
yeah, I think so.
I mean,
yeah, I mean both of them.
yeah. I mean, I would say like, you know, I've seen some relationships, family dynamics, I should say, where it's like a little more disbarred versus like, hey, like your sons want to hang out with you.
Yeah.
Want to like go get food or whichever the case, you know, want to chat about whatever's going on in the world. Like I'd say that's a pretty good testament of who you are.
Yeah. And when I do hang out with Austin or Noah, I've started drinking tea now because I don't do caffeine. So I started drinking tea. And so Noah and I go to coffee shops, and I can't believe how much I learned from him. He's so much smarter than I was at 24 years old. It's not even close. And Austin's the same way. You know, Austin, you know, I've been taking Austin to Africa since he was 12. So, I mean, I listen to him talk to people when we're, you know, on a safari, and I don't know half the stuff he's talking about, but you know, they're both good kids.
Come on. That's so cool. I remember documenting with my team, Austin's wedding. And when his wife got him that awesome firearm, I was like, okay, this is great. I'm like, I just love this day.
Yeah.
Is there like a time when you were younger, like prior to getting into what you're doing now, where you were like, man, like I'm really good at sales? Like, was there a light bulb moment? Was it like, you know, the classic, like the kid selling lemonade or kind of moment?
We used to sell worms when I was probably, you know, 10 years old to fishermen.
Do you think that's where it all originated from?
It could be, but I've pretty much had my own business since I was in my early 20s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'd have side businesses, always had a side business of some kind. And so I just kind of like, nobody ever said, hey, this is what you need to do. It just kind of came natural.
Oh, wow.
Like,
yeah.
You know, I worked in restaurants, you know, that kind of customer service. And I worked in customer service for a printing company. And then I started my own printing company.
Oh, wow. Okay. So it just,
yeah. But you know, that wasn't really paying the bills as much as I needed it to. So I did, I got my first job in engineering, and that's been,
and then just took off from there. Yeah. That's super cool. Wow. Okay. So it's like so well-rounded. So you had a lot of soft skill development prior with all of that too. And just like a tiny bit of experience with running that printing company.
Yeah. Things like this are the amount of knowledge you can gain from watching podcasts or live streams or YouTube videos. That is monumentally more beneficial than a college degree.
I would wholeheartedly agree.
I mean, the amount of actual skills you can gain from watching a show like this, listening to a show like this, or an interactive, online training, that stuff didn't exist when I was, starting out. Entrepreneurs like you, like both my sons, their opportunities are a lot better. Had I had access to that kind of knowledge, I never really had like a mentor.
Interesting.
Yeah, I didn't. I mean, my dad had a few of his own businesses. My grandfather had a few of their own businesses, but as far as mentoring me on business skills, I kind of just learned it.
No way.
Yeah.
Holy smokes. Okay.
Yeah.
That's huge.
That was hard.
Yeah, I believe it.
And learning what I didn't know was relatively easy. And I think that's why I was able to succeed. Like, I brought my mom into the company to help with finance because she did accounting. But then when the company grew past, and she, was getting ready to retire,
Yeah.
then I brought on a CFO, and now I have a chief marketing officer and a vice president of operations. And I realized what I either don't like to do or I'm not any good at. And then you replace that. And what I call that is paying for my free time. Like, could I have a few extra $1 million in the bank? Yes. A year.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be able to function. The company would suffer. Our employees would suffer. My personal life would suffer. So finding the areas you're good at and, focusing on that and outsourcing the rest or hiring people to do the rest is the way to go.
Come on. That's so good. Yeah. Because I remember you and your CFO at one point during my own run of my business here were like, hey, like, you need to hire. Otherwise, you are going to just plummet. And I did. And I was like, okay, I see the fruits of it and I see the reward of it. And I ended up making part of the hiring on also kind of mentoring at the same time, which like it's kind of tough because like I feel like for creatives, actually, no, not feel, I know for creatives, we get so emotionally attached to our work sometimes. And whether it's the entire process or a specific portion of the journey, that it's this whole roller coaster. And so having to almost be my own, maybe I should have hired out someone for this. HR company.
You're your own HR.
Yep.
You're your own finance. Collecting bills is not fun.
No.
Doesn't matter.
Nope.
Thankfully, I have people that do that.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't want to do it.
Yeah, and that's the tough part. Because now that I've stripped back down to just myself, it's this weird duality that I've seen the tremendous rewards of taking a solo entrepreneur effort into something that's scaled with, essentially what someone who was full-time and then everyone else was contracted, which worked really well. And then joining back down to this, I'm like, well, I had to recognize for myself, like I had to decide, hey, do I want to run a business or do I want to just keep doing my own thing? And not that running a business was bad, but it was recognizing I didn't have the right clients / the right people to be able to run this without more hiccups or like without hitting a wall further of like having to train or having to X, Y, and Z. And maybe that was just a time thing, right? But I knew that I still wanted to just get back into the outdoor industry, which is why I kind of disbanded and let everyone do their own thing, in wanting them to like be able to take the experiences that I gave them and the lessons that I gave them and have them run with it, because I can still call them to this day and still be like, hey, I've got a job. Can you help me out? Yeah, absolutely.
That's that network we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. But I find it so cool that like, even in the understanding of like you with the printing company to go like, hold up, this isn't paying the bills. This isn't what I want. This is probably eating up way more time than I really need it to.
Yeah.
I need to shift. And I think that's cool because I think it's easy for people to take pride in their work, but also probably really hard once you've taken pride in your work to like recognize I have to pivot otherwise.
Yeah.
Because, and you get this a ton, you have to take risks as a business owner. Like, and they're sometimes calculated risks, and other times you're like, we're just going to see what happens.
The majority, I tried at least now, try to at least involve other people in the decision-making process that do look at the analytics a lot more than I would.
Yeah.
But no, back in the old days, it was just like, yeah, let's do it. Let's try it. And some of them worked. Some of them didn't.
For sure. That's so cool. Is there something that like, actually, this is a great question. What are some entrepreneurial values that you've taught your sons?
Number one is be there for the customer. Be there especially in the beginning. be there when they need you, and they'll always rely on you. And then it'll get to a point where, kind of like where it is now, I'll get a call from all the people I dealt with that were at engineering level are now vice presidents, CEOs, and presidents of companies.
Come on.
And I'll get a call. They'll still call me, but they'll say, "Hey, send one of your people," or
Yeah.
so yeah. But it was because I did whatever it took when I first started. They to service them. That's why they still call. So customer service number one.
Come on. And then, like, is there stuff that you think on the familial side, as you were raising your kids, that you like instilled in them that you think is like one of their big values, like something that you learned from your dad or whichever?
I mean, there's a lot. I would say
some prominent ones, I guess.
I would say, treat them with respect, be their friend, but also let them. I would get mad so infrequently. When I got mad, they knew it was
that they messed up.
And it's the same thing with my company. Like, I mean, in a year, if I had to raise my voice 2 times, that's a lot. And then they know when I'm not happy with something, it was because some process was not followed through on, and it's costing us money. So,
right.
Yeah, pick your battles, I guess. Make sure that you're not one of the types of dads or husbands that's just mad all the time. I'm better now. I wasn't always like that, but I'm much better now.
First few rounds of being a dad.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Or the first, so I've been married 31 years. 31 years, I think. That's the first few were rocky, because I was starting the company, and but no, it's good now.
That's awesome. Without taking up too much more of your time, Dave, for all my listeners, whether young, old, etc., those who are looking to get into starting their own business, whether creatively or something a little more strategic like your own, beyond being there for the customer, what other advice would you give?
I would say make sure you're funded. Make sure you're funded well enough that you don't have to worry about, making your car payment.
Ooh.
Yeah, because if you start out a company and you're, living paycheck to paycheck, you may make decisions that aren't the best for the company, but for your own personal financial needs.
Interesting.
So I did have one guy tell me one time, we were talking about executive compensation, and he said executives are compensated so they don't have to worry about making their mortgage payment. They're worried about making a bank covenant or, acquiring another company. And when I started to think about that, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. So I've never felt bad about the amount of money I make, because I don't, I focus, my thought is on the company's money, not my own.
Makes sense. Yeah.
All my bills are paid, not a problem. But if I don't have to worry about that, I can focus on the company. And I've actually had employees and even a partner for a little while that unfortunately he had his financial situation wasn't the same as mine. So he was making decisions based on what would cost him personally versus what was the best thing for the company. Mm-hmm. I was actually able to buy a company because, I was in the right spot at the right time.
Right.
And he wasn't able to buy in. And that was a sore subject, but it wasn't, wasn't my fault.
Yeah. Because essentially, so from being a business owner standpoint, if I'm hearing you correctly, it's like, hey, if you can get to a place where you're financially stable enough that you can make solid decisions with your head on straight, right? It's not because you're the boss that you're making the money, but rather because you're executing and overseeing everything else as a system.
Yeah.
So other people can get paid, other things can get completed, etc. It's why the paycheck is not just warranted, but it's like something you shouldn't have to, one, worry about, but two, also not feel bad about, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that would be my biggest advice is make sure you're funded enough to give it a really good go. I mean, plan ahead, say, all right, I'm going to need this much money to last me the next 12, 18 months. And I'm going to give it a shot. And if you do it with less than that, sometimes it works. With I started with $16,000 is what started the company, and I borrowed that.
Come on.
So, that would be my number one goal. Is don't be stressed about finding work for the company and trying to pay your bills. It's too much.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I like that. That reminds me of something I read where it's like, don't let your dreams be a burden.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
That's awesome. I like that. That's awesome. Cool. Well, is there any other things that you would like to part the listeners
I'm
with?
super excited that you started fly fishing.
Listen, I'm stoked. I feel like I still have the itch. Like I'm back in Michigan and I'm like, Pierre Marquette's only like a few hours away.
Salmon will be running in a month and a half.
I know. I'm like, so I'm going to Alaska next month. So actually at the end of this month, and I get back like middle of September and I'm like, okay, like, wait, month and a half. So is that October for salmon?
It's mid-September, October. This is when I like to go.
Okay. Shoot.
Frank Willits from the Pierre Marquette River Lodge.
Noted. Is that... No, that's not Northern Anglers. I'm thinking different guys. You know Northern Anglers?
I've heard of them.
Okay, yeah. I've watched a few things from them.
Frank's the best.
Okay, noted. Well noted, yeah. And this is like the tough thing where I'm like, so I didn't learn how to tie flies, which I'm like, okay, like I can probably find some resources on how to tie flies.
YouTube?
Yeah, exactly. But I kind of laugh because I'm like, okay, I'm going to get this Reddington trout kit. And then I kind of figured, I've got these Patagonia joggers. I'm actually wearing them right now. And they work great as a wader.
Yeah.
They aren't waterproof, but they dry super fast.
Wet wading.
Yeah. And I kind of realized by the time I moved to Montana, there's all these great secondhand stores that have some insane, used gear that is barely touched or barely used. And I'm like, I'll get a pair of waders, like true waders then.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if I have a pair that might fit you.
No.
From when the kids were little.
No. I mean, given how tall your sons are, I mean, listen.
Yeah.
If they're baby blue, we'll rock it. That's amazing. But yeah, no. I'm stoked. Maybe we'll have to get like a fishing trip together as soon as I can figure out what my fall looks like. There was a chance that I was going to go to Nepal, and I'm like, I can't stack my trips that close. Yeah. I'm like, that's a lot.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to Hawaii. We just got back from Africa. We're going to Hawaii in September for 2 weeks, and we're actually going to do some hunting there.
Ooh, wait, what are you going to hunt?
Axis deer, and they have a feral like a goat.
Okay,
and
a feral goat.
Yeah, it's like a mountain goat.
Okay, yeah,
and then they have wild boar.
Okay, great. Okay, but access deer, oh my gosh.
They're beautiful, aren't they?
They're beautiful, one. Two, some of the best venison I've ever had. I was like, what?
It's very good.
Yeah, because in Texas, they're an invasive species. I don't know if they technically are in Hawaii.
Yeah, same. They're introduced. Okay. They're from India originally.
Okay, got it, which is crazy because I'm like, when I first saw one, it was funny. So my buddy Josh and I were heading out to West Texas to head towards a hunting outpost that he was organizing. And so we left the ranch at like 4 a.m. I'm like, goodness gracious, it's dark. And, we're like checking out his phone communication. He got one of those boosters.
Oh, yeah.
So we're testing that out. And as we were getting ready to turn right, this deer like just popped out of nowhere and like hit the side of his truck, and it kind of skidded off and like went off to the side. And he's like, oh man, like we gotta check it out. Like we gotta see how bad the damage was. It was like such a small deer at the time to me that I was like, oh, I think it was a fawn. He's like, that's weird. Like a fawn, it's spring. Like what? Yeah. And so we're driving. He's like, he calls me again and he's like, did you get a good look at that deer? And I was like, yeah. Like, he's like, what did it look like? I'm like, well, it didn't have any sheds, but like, it was speckled. Like I just assumed it was like a young doe or something, thinking like Bambi essentially. Mm-hmm. He's like, that wasn't a doe. That wasn't a fawn. That was an axis deer. Yeah. He's like, dang it. Had I known, we could have totally pulled over and gotten that. I'm like, shoot, my bad.
Yeah, they're good.
They're so good. I was like, okay, this is I mean, compared to whitetail, I mean, not that whitetail's bad,
No.
but just like it's so different that
Yeah.
I'm like, man, this is, I get it.
Yeah, no, they're good. They're good.
That's exciting though. What island are you going to?
We're hunting on Maui, but the most of the time we're gonna be on Kauai.
Ooh, okay.
I've never been to Hawaii.
Never?
No,
Okay. Well,
no.
neither
I've been
have I.
I've been to
Yeah.
6 of the 7 continents, but I've never been to Hawaii or Mackinac Island.
I mean, at least you're knocking out one.
Yeah.
Mackinac Island, you can always visit. It's just right up
One
the
of
road.
these days, yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. Have you also visited all 50 states outside of Hawaii? Or I guess
Most of them.
Most of them. Okay.
I probably.
Okay. Yeah.
I'd have to really think hard about one I haven't. But you know what? Actually, I've never been to Oregon or Washington.
Okay. I haven't been to
But I've
Oregon
been
either.
around all of them.
Okay.
Idaho.
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah, because so mine are Vermont, Oregon, and Hawaii, and I kind of figured I would make Kauai specifically my last place that I would visit just to round out the 50
Yeah,
on
that's
like
cool.
a high note, Well, I kind of figured I can't go to Hawaii and not do like the infamous like Jurassic Park helicopter tour, right? Like it just feel a little lackluster if I did.
No, I agree.
Cool. Well, folks, that is all for today. Dave, where can we find a little more information on the productivity team?
Best place is probably our website, productivityteam.com.
Cool. Just like that.
Just like that.
Awesome, folks. If you guys are looking to find out a little more about what Dave does, you can check out the productivity team. He's got a bunch of great insight himself. If you need to somehow reach out to him about job placements, or maybe they can place you in a job, so on and so forth.
There's contact forms are on the website.
Cool. Perfect. That, or if you are a business and you are looking to get the right person, hit these guys up. They do awesome, awesome work. But yeah, that's all, folks. We'll catch y'all soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.